According to General Hospital spoilers, Willow Tate has more reasons than ever to kill Drew Kane. Willow has even more reason to want Drew out of her life now that she knows Drew was the one who prevented her from seeing Michael Corinthos in Germany. Willow now knows about Nina Reeves and Drew's affair, that he harmed Wiley Corinthos, and that Drew kept Willow away from Michael while in Germany. And as Michael continues to refuse Willow access to her children, an unstable Willow may devise the ultimate strategy to get Drew out of the way and her children back. Willow Tate wants her children back more than anything. Willow blames Drew for separating her from her children, and doesn't understand why Michael won't let her see them now that Drew is no longer involved. Willow will grow desperate to ensure that occurs, and because she is not thinking clearly right now, she may conclude that the best way to address her difficulties is to kill two birds with one stone. Willow would believe that getting Drew and Michael out of the way would guarantee her children's return. Willow Tate murders Drew Kane. Willow may agree to meet with Drew to discuss their future plans. She knows Drew will go to any length to have her back, but he is not surprised. Willow would visit Drew at his home and bring a gun with her. First, she would convince Drew that she forgives him. Drew is taken aback as Willow pulls out a revolver. Drew begs Willow to not shoot. Willow would accuse him of causing her to lose everything she cares about, particularly her children. Drew would apologize, but Willow doesn't want to hear hers. Willow shoots him many times, knocking Drew to the ground. Drew Kane is dead, and Willow Tate frames Michael Corinthos. Now that Drew is dead and lying in a pool of blood, Willow will not be held accountable for the crime. Willow would make Michael pay the price to get her children back. She would place the gun at Carly's house where Michael is staying. However, she would make certain to conceal it in his bedroom so that he would be accused. Willow could sow the seed that the gun that killed Drew is somewhere, and Dante Falconeri would find it and be forced to arrest Michael. Michael has been framed for Drew's murder, and will face a jury trial. What do you think? What are your thoughts? Do you believe that if Willow continues to be separated from her children, she will go to any length to reunite them? Will Willow kill Drew? Will she frame Michael for the crime? Keep watching General Hospital on ABC weekdays to see what happens next. General Hospital spoilers state that some Harrison Chase and Willow Tate reunion hints are beginning to appear. Let's speak about why these ex-partners might reconcile, and what that means for their future. Willow will make another attempt to clean up the mess she's created from August 4th to August 8th. Willow may have to confront Michael Corinthos once more and beg him to reconsider allowing her to see the children. Of course, Michael may claim that Willow hasn't demonstrated enough stability. It's easy to see Chase walking along and overhearing Michael tearing into Willow. According to GH spoilers, Chase will confront Michael in the August 6th episode, which could include a Willow-related face-off. Chase may come to Willow's rescue and defend her against Michael because she is in so much misery. Chase may feel compelled to support Willow's decision, since he understands how important motherhood is to her. Chase may also bring up some personal difficulties, since he dearly wants a kid, but is unable to have one because he is sterile. To make matters worse, Brooke Lynn Quartermain is considering delaying their adoption plans. That could trigger some difficult emotions for Chase ahead of his battle with Michael. In other words, Chase will feel sympathy for Willow, and may believe Michael is being unkind given the circumstances. Chase may become Willow's new protector, which might be problematic given the writer's previous foreshadowing of issues in his marriage to Brooke Lynn. Willow may easily identify Chase as her next savior, and could even coax him into loving her again. Chase has always had feelings for Willow, so it shouldn't be too difficult. Now that Willow's engagement to Drew Kane has ended and Chase's marriage appears to be crumbling, a Chase and Willow reunion could be in the works. Would you wish to see Willow and Chase get back together? Will they truly fall back in love? Or will Chase become a pawn in Willow's custody game? Regardless, General Hospital spoilers indicate that some love upheaval may be on the way in PC, so stay tuned for updates on any potential changes. The news rocked Port Charles like a bombshell, but no one anticipated where the shrapnel would land. Willow Corinthos had always been viewed as a peaceful, quiet, morally oriented woman who strived to do what was best for her family, even if it meant sacrificing her own happiness. However, recent events destroyed the sense of stability. Drew Kane had died and stories began to circulate, rumors that went far beyond the realm of terrible accident or petty revenge. The most startling discovery was one Willow had made herself. Michael, her own husband, was to blame. The truth, however, was much more twisted. It all started with Drew's rising interference. After his release from prison, he made it obvious that he was not going to sit back and watch the people he cared about spiral, or so he claimed. His link with Willow, weirdly enough, had grown stronger over time. What began as mutual anguish at Carly's losses and family difficulties had evolved into private revelations. He'd been present when Michael Short departed town to manage ELQ interests abroad. He was present when Willow experienced a health scare that no one else knew about. And in that intimacy, something had changed, not into romance, but into something more frightening. Drew grew possessive. He hid it effectively, assuming the roles of trusted counselor, moral compass, and devoted friend. But behind closed doors, his tone toward Willow shifted. He questioned Michael's allegiance to her. He urged her to see that her marriage was weak, implying that Michael's objectives were no longer in line with her ideals. Most chillingly, he began to appear at strange hours uninvited, remaining too long in her personal space, and spinning emotionally deceptive stories about what Michael was up to behind her back. Willow was not an idiot. She felt the undercurrents. She saw Drew disintegrating, especially when his own plans began to fall. His takeover efforts had failed, Carly had grown cold to him, and Sonny's power remained unchallenged. He couldn't take it, not after he thought he'd given all for this family, and so he became fixated on Willow. The storm that raged outside Port Charles on the night Drew died wasn't the only one. Willow had not intended to meet him. She was at the boathouse, clearing her mind after a frustrating fight with Michael about her desire for more freedom. He thought she was still weak and overly cautious about resuming public life following her medical challenges. She wanted to prove him wrong, and Drew was the only one who seemed to think she possessed that strength. But as soon as she saw him, she realized something was amiss. He was unstable, with red-rimmed eyes and slightly slurred sentences from too many bourbons. He told her they needed to talk quickly. He said he had information that would bring Michael down, proving Michael had been in secret communication with federal authorities in order to turn Sonny in. Drew's face twisted when she disputed him, telling him it didn't make logic and that Michael would never do it again. He insisted she wasn't thinking properly and that Michael had misled her, like he had done with everyone else. She turned to go. He seized her wrists. She yanked away sharply and he staggered, tripped on the uneven dock. She heard the harsh snap of his head against the edge before the splash and quiet. Her instincts drove her to run. Not cowardice or guilt, but terror. Fear that no one will think it was an accident. Fear that if the truth was revealed, Michael's enemies would use it to destroy him, Sonny, and everything they had achieved. And perhaps, just maybe, there was a worse worry lurking beneath, that she had intended for it to happen. In the days that followed, everything crumbled faster than she could manage. Drew drowned according to the autopsy, and blunt force trauma was a contributing factor. There were no witnesses. However, security camera near the lake captured a glimpse of someone leaving the area. A woman dressed in a red coat. Willow donated the identical coat to a shelter the morning after Drew died. She persuaded herself it was damage control, not a cover-up. She convinced herself that no one needed to know the truth in order to preserve her children's future. However, the police were already circling. Sam, grieving and suspicious, began to investigate. Dante discovered discrepancies in Drew's last phone records, namely calls to Willow. Carly was too numb to think properly, but she could see something was odd in Willow's too calculated anguish. Then came the unexpected twist. Willow admitted to Chase, her ex and one of the few remaining people she could trust, that Michael had become unstable. She claimed she was concerned for her safety, that Michael and Drew were at strife, and that Michael had threatened Drew. She fabricated a story about a late-night brawl, an argument involving ELQ, Sonny, and her. She even manufactured a voicemail, meticulously crafted from old recordings, that appeared to substantiate Drew's desperation and Michael's rage. Within days, Michael was brought in for questioning. He didn't grasp what was going on. He knew he and Drew clashed on strategy, but murder? The treachery harmed more than any legal accusation. He gazed into Willow's eyes as she stood behind the glass, clutching their daughter, and all he saw was ice. Willow repeatedly told herself that this was the only way. That if Michael took the fall, the heat would subside. Sonny's empire would not be thrown into chaos. The kids would still have her. She would ensure that Michael was not taken away, but rather discredited enough to shift suspicion. But what she didn't expect was the chain reaction it would cause. Nina, shocked, confronted her. "You are not this person," she retorted. "You don't get to burn your husband to the ground and pretend it's noble." Willow didn't flinch. She merely instructed her mother-in-law to back off. Jason returned just as the tide was turning. He'd heard the news from afar. Drew's death, Michael's arrest, Willow's quick shift into survivor mode. And he was not buying any of it. He knew Drew, warts and all. He also knew Michael. Most importantly, he grasped how grief might fracture a soul. He'd seen Willow at her breaking point before, but this was deliberate. He started digging. It didn't take him long to find contradictions. The timestamp on the voicemail was incorrect. The phone metadata was manipulated. A witness at the shelter recalls the red coat and Willow arriving with her eyes swollen from weeping. Not grief but something more primal. Then security footage from a neighboring gas station revealed Drew and Willow strolling toward the dock that night. "I am not arguing. Not battling. Just be quiet." Together. Jason revealed everything to Carly, and the two began piecing together the horrific truth. Willow didn't just let Drew die. She made use of his death. Carly was torn apart by the realization. She had always supported Willow, justified her decisions, and forgave her slights. But this was a deception that may devastate her family. Meanwhile, Michael sat behind bars, bewildered, broken, and yet hoping that his wife would come clean. But Willow did not. She doubled down. She filed paperwork for full custody of their children. Michael was declared unfit due to mental distress following Drew's death. Her expression on the courthouse steps was placid, refined, and almost saintly. But inwardly she was cracking. She still saw Drew in her nightmares, not the man who scared her that night, but the man who once helped her smile again after cancer, who held her when she was too tired to move. And Michael, she could see him in every corner of their house and on their daughter's face. Her betrayal had cost her more than she realized, and it was eating away at her piece by piece. In a rare moment of quiet, she muttered to herself in the mirror, "I did what I had to do." But her eyes revealed the lie. The town started turning slowly. The Corinthos name had weight, and Jason's inquiry discovered new ground. It was only a matter of time until Michael's charges were dropped and the spotlight shifted. Willow had spent months convincing herself that the chapter with Chase had ended. Her life had taken too many twists and turns, some filled with grief, others with responsibility, and the guy she once loved had become little more than a delicate ache hidden under the surface. But lately things had changed. Subtle moments began to bring that anguish to the forefront. Fleeting glances, shared memories, and the surprising warmth of Chase's presence whenever they crossed paths. Nobody spoke it aloud, but the tension was palpable. Something unresolved persisted between them, and neither seemed able to dismiss it. Chase's reaction to seeing Willow again was conflicted. He had worked hard to forget the anguish of their past, her decision to marry him out of charity, her heart reserved for Michael, and the gradual dismantling of the illusion they had created. But that was then. Willow now stood in front of him, transformed by parenthood, loss, disease, and survival. He no longer viewed her through the lens of betrayal, but through the eyes of a guy who, deep down, still harbored feelings for the girl who once tried to love him in the only way she knew how. Their reconnection started quietly. It was neither a major confession nor a spectacular showdown. It was a routine day at the hospital. Chase had arrived to bring something off for Brooklyn, and Willow was assisting a nurse with patient files. They bumped into each other in the corridor, and for the first time in a long time, their discussion felt natural. It felt light, familiar, and nearly effortless. Willow chuckled at one of Chase's dry jokes, and he grinned for longer than he should have. Took them both off guard. It began to occur more frequently after that. Willow would see Chase when going through the park with Violet or at the Metro Court. He'd wave and she'd smile. One afternoon, they ended up sitting at the same table for a staff luncheon at GH, and the old rhythm resurfaced. They discussed work, Port Charles, Brooklyn's current song release, and eventually their past. It wasn't awkward, which surprised me. Their exchange was delicate, and they both recognized how time had altered them. Willow acknowledged that she often reflected on how events had unfolded, that their marriage, albeit being founded on a falsehood, had genuine moments of connectedness. Chase admitted that, while he regretted how things ended, he never stopped caring about her happiness. Their honesty was disarming. There was an unexpected peace between two people who had before been caught up in such emotional turbulence. Willow craved a simpler environment as Michael's world became more entwined with the power dynamics of the Corinthos legacy and Drew's gradual collapse. Michael was becoming distant, not cruel but focused. His intentions, which had once been clear, had become muddled by the strains of remaining loyal to Sunny, safeguarding the children, and silently grappling with his own buried guilt. Willow sensed a shift. The guy she had married in haste and come to love was now preoccupied with duties that did not always include her. It wasn't Chase who made her question her marriage. It was the growing quiet between her and Michael. The wordless gap. She still loved him, but love wasn't always enough to keep anything together, especially when it was fraying around the edges. Meanwhile, Brooklyn, as sensitive as usual, observed a subtle alteration in Chase's mood whenever Willow was there. First, she said nothing. She trusted Chase, and their relationship had reached the stage where honesty was essential. But one night, over wine and quiet talk in the Quartermain mansion, Brooklyn quietly inquired, "Is there still something between you and Willow?" Chase did not lie. "I don't know," he answered. "I believe there might be. But things are different now." "We're different," Brooklyn said calmly. Instead, she slowly nodded, her face unreadable. She was not upset, but she was wary. Don't lose sight of what you have today because of what you had before. Chase thought about the talk for days. He didn't want to hurt Brooklyn. He sincerely loved her. But he couldn't deny that when he saw Willow, something unsaid occurred between them. It wasn't simply nostalgia. It was curiosity, perhaps even hope. The question wasn't whether there was anything left between them, but if it was worth exploring. Willow's attraction to Chase was motivated by a desire to understand her present, rather than repair her past. She changed. The woman who had married a man to keep a secret was now a mother attempting to reclaim her identity. She had learnt to be fearless, honest, and perhaps most importantly, to listen to her own heart without allowing guilt to guide her. The idea of a reunion did not mean she had ceased loving Michael. It simply meant that she was reevaluating her needs and who she was becoming. She'd seen what self-sacrifice cost her before, and she didn't want to repeat the mistake of pretending everything was okay when it wasn't. One rainy evening, she was at the park with Wiley and Amelia, when Chase happened to be passing by with Violet. The kids rushed ahead together, laughing and playing in the puddles, and something about the situation felt right. Willow gazed at Chase, who grinned so easily, and everything else faded. There was no history, no tragedy, and no complications just now. They sat on a seat, observing the youngsters, and Willow turned to face him. "I miss this," she said gently. Chase looked at her. "What about the chaos?" She grinned. "The calm within it." He nodded. "Yeah, me too." They spoke nothing else that day, but something changed between them. Since then, the air has been charged differently. It wasn't stress, it was possibilities. And as the days went, they began to wonder what it might be like to completely investigate that option. Willow confided in Sasha, who listened without passing judgment. "You don't owe anyone an apology for listening to your heart," Sasha replied gently. "Not even Michael." Chase met with Finn, who advised elder brother Michael to reflect quietly. "Don't go backward," he said, "until you're certain it's not just regret. Make sure it's love." By now, Brooklyn had sensed the emotional tug. She was not threatened, but she was also not blind. One afternoon she met Willow for coffee. Not out of envy, but out of curiosity, and possibly a subtle warning. "There has always been something unfinished between you and Chase," Brooklyn stated. Willow did not refute it. "I understand. I'm not attempting to harm anyone. I simply need to be honest with myself." Brooklyn gave her a long look before nodding. "Then do it. But don't let your perplexity become his turmoil." That talk stuck with Willow. It made her think twice before doing anything. But it also made her realize that waiting didn't solve anything. The decision to sit down with Michael was difficult, but it was important. She told him the truth, not about Chase specifically, but about the growing quiet between them. About how she thought they had become strangers in a shared home. Michael was calm, almost too calm. "I knew something was off," he stated. I just didn't know how to fix it. Maybe we can't, Willow answered. Perhaps it isn't about mending it anymore. Perhaps it's about letting go. Michael didn't argue. He looked at her for a long time before nodding. Willow cried as Chase departed. If Chase makes you feel seen, then maybe you owe it to yourself to find out what that means. Not because she was grieved, but because genuine closure never came without pain. Willow and Chase gradually began to spend more time together as the summer progressed. There were no great gestures or loud declarations, just a genuine quiet reconnection. A walk through the park, coffee on the hospital balcony, an evening spent on the docks, watching the lights shimmer across the sea. They weren't hurrying to do anything. They had already tried that once and it had failed. This time they were developing something slower and steadier. Something real. And while the future remained uncertain and not everyone understood, one thing became evident with each passing day. Whatever had once shattered them was no longer impeding their progress.